I Facebook Live I share.
You can start now.
Yes. Thank you. Okay. Good evening and namaste. Welcome to Architect Speaks 32, organized by the 13th Executive Committee of Society of Nepalese Architects, SONA. And we are here through Zoom and live from SONA's Facebook page. Myself, Architect Shrestha, and I will be your moderator for the evening. The webinar today is on the book title, Revisiting Kathmandu Valley's Public Realm, Some Insights into Understanding its Public Spaces. And today we have authors of the book, Architect Dr. Erajan Chitrakar, Architect Binda Shrestha, Architect Barsa Chitrakar Shah, Architect Sam Sunder Coven, Architect Rikesh Shrestha, and Mr. Sovitzakya, presenting their respective chapters. But before that, we have respected Professor Bharat Sharma sir to give a short review about the book.
Should I start?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Now, should I start?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. मलाई लागेको मलाई सबभन्दा पहिले डाक्टर रजनले मलाई अप्रोच गर्दाखेरि फरवर्ड लेखिदिनु त्यो किताबको बारेमा भनेर अप्रोच गरेको थियो. आई वाज रियली हम्बल. आई बिकेम भेरी ओभरवेल्म नै भए कि कुनै टाइममा मेरो विद्यार्थी भएको डाक्टर रजन जो प्रोफेसर भइरहेछ राम्रो छ. कुनै पनि गुरुलाई आफ्नो विद्यार्थी आफूभन्दा पनि माथि होराइजनमा देखिए भने सबभन्दा आनन्द लाग्ने कुरा त्यही हो. दुनियाँमा गुरुलाई सबभन्दा आनन्द लाग्ने कुरा त्यही हो. र रजनले चाहिँ नि त्यो भन्दाखेरि मैले आई वाज रियली हम्बल. र मैले भने हुन्छ भाउ मलाई लागेको कुरा. र त्यसमा पनि जुन टपिक मेन टपिक छ, थीम छ त्यो किताबको, त्यो चाहिँ नि इट इज भेरी क्लोज टु मी, मेरो ल्यान्डस्केप र इन्भाइरोमेन्टल प्लानिङको कन्टेक्स्टमा. त्यसैले झन् म ओभरवेल्म भए. र त्यसमा लेखकहरू 6 जनाको जुन छ, र स्टार्टिङ विथ रजन र लास्टमा हाम्रो सोभित भाइको छ. बडा अमेजिङ लाग्यो मलाई यसमा कि भाइ चाहिँ नि आर्किटेक्चरल ब्याकग्राउन्डको नभए तापनि यो पब्लिक रेलमा चाहिँ नि स्पेसको रेलमा चाहिँ कसरी चाहिँ म्यानेज गर्छ, द्याट इज अ भेरी च्यालेन्जिङ थिङ. यो खालि टेक्नोक्रेटिक हिसाबले मात्रै पब्लिक रेलम क्रिएट हुन्छ भन्ने कुरा होइन. त्यसको म्यानेजमेन्ट पार्ट चाहिँ नि इक्वली भेरी इम्पोर्टेन्ट है. त्यसैले त्यो भाइको अहिले कुरा पनि भयो उहाँसँग. मजा लाग्यो त्यो सोभित भाइले चाहिँ कभर गरेको. त्यसैले मलाई लाग्छ कि यो किताबकोमा उपयोगिता चाहिँ नि अहिले सोना हाम्रो अध्यक्षजी चाहिँ नि यो क्रिएट गरिदिनु हो र आज यो हुँदैछ. त्यो उहाँलाई भुरी प्रशंसा गर्नै पर्छ सबैले है. तर के छ भने मलाई लाग्छ कि स्टुडेन्ट बी कन्फाइन्ड. मेरो विचारमा यो किताबको चाहिँ नि रिडरसिप र चाहिँ यसको कन्टेन्टको चाहिँ नि हामीले चाहिँ धेरै प्रभावित गर्नुपर्छ हाम्रो समाजमा, खास गरेर काठमाडौँको कन्टेक्स्टमा कि हाम्रो इन पास्ट चाहिँ पब्लिक रेलम यो स्पेसेसको क्रिएसन कसरी हुन्थ्यो, कसरी सेफगार्ड हुन्थ्यो, कसरी म्यानेज हुन्थ्यो र अहिले के गति छ र फ्युचरमा चाहिँ नि हाम्रो चाहिँ नि प्लानिङको के भिजन हुन्छ र कसरी हामी त्यो स्ट्राटेजी क्रिएट गरेर सेफ हिसाबले एउटा राम्रो इन्भाइरोमेन्ट, अर्बन इन्भाइरोमेन्ट क्रिएट गर्न सक्छौँ अघि. त्यो मेजर रोल हो. र मलाई लाग्छ कि यो किताबको चाहिँ नि हामीमा मात्रै कन्फाइन नभएर चाहिँ नि यसको वाइडर रिडरसिप र कसरी हुन सक्छ त्यो चाहिँ नि एउटा म्यानेजमेन्टको पार्ट हो. सायद सोभित भाइले भन्ला या डाक्टर रजनले भन्ला है. कसरी त्यसको वाइड रिडरसिपमा इभन टु द कमनर एनी सिटिजनले चाहिँ बुझ्न पर्यो कि यो यसको चाहिँ नि अहम भूमिका के छ हाम्रो चाहिँ नि अर्बन इन्भाइरोमेन्ट अथवा रुरल इन्भाइरोमेन्ट, अर्बन इन्भाइरोमेन्ट कसरी हाउ इट सेफगार्ड्स र हाउ इट इज प्रोटेक्टेड र हाउ इट सुड बी क्रिएटेड, कसरी यो क्रिएट हुन्छ. अब कसरी यो डिसएपियर पनि भइराखेको छ हाम्रो काठमाडौँको कन्टेक्स्टमा है. त्यसैले यो म त यो किताब चाहिँ एउटा राम्रो सर्ट इन द डार्क जस्तो लाग्छ मलाई. र हामीलाई सोल सर्चिङ नेपाली काठमाडौँको बसेको नेपालीहरूलाई चाहिँ घचघचाएर चाहिँ नि सोल सर्चिङ गर्ने 6वटा आर्टिकल्सले भन्ने मलाई लाग्छ. Having said that, I shouldn't be talking long. I should be listening to you. Thank you. Hello, moderator, where are you?
Yes, thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your kind review. With that, we have our first speaker, architect Dr. Erajan Chitrakar. With a background in architecture and urbanism, he holds a PhD in urban design from Queensland University of Technology, Australia. He has also completed a master's degree in urban design from the University of Hong Kong and Bachelor of Architecture degree from Nepal Engineering College. He has more than 15 years of academic experience in Australia and Nepal and is currently pursuing a career in research at Melbourne Polytechnic, Australia. And being one of the editors, he will be first giving the presentation on the book. On to you, sir.
Thank you, Hina. And also I would like to, first of all, thank SONA for this wonderful opportunity to, talk about the book, some of the, stories behind the book. And so it is really a big opportunity for us as an editor, for me as an editor, as well as I think it's a big honor for all of us. I would also like to thank Bharat sir for his kind words and also for writing the foreword for the book. I highly appreciate your support in the book. So let me first. Okay, so let me share my screen. Can you see the slides, Hina?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. So first of all, before talking about one of the chapters that I have written for the book, so first let me talk briefly about the project itself. So how did it happen, and what are the different stages, different steps that we've been through during this journey. So in this brief talk, I will talk about my personal background and motivation. And also I would talk about the inception of the idea in writing the book. And briefly, I'll talk about the editing process and also the outcome and the contribution that it is likely to make within the scholarly environment. A brief academic background of myself. So I've got a background in architecture and urbanism, as Hina just explained. So I did my Bachelor of Architecture from Nepal Engineering College in 2002. I became, registered with SONA in 2003, and also I did my master's degree in urban design in 2006 from Hong Kong University, and also a PhD in urban design in 2015 from Queensland University of Technology in Australia. So my PhD was on public space, and the title was A Transformation of Public Space in Contemporary Urban Neighborhoods of Kathmandu Valley, Nepal, and Investigation of Changing Provision, Use, and Meaning. So basically, I try to look at how the public spaces have transformed from old urban areas compared to old urban areas, how it has transformed in the new urban areas. And also my research interest is in the broad areas of urbanism with a focus on public realm and placemaking. And also I have done some research on urban growth and transformation. And also my research areas include urban resilience and planning for disaster and smart urban environments. And also, I think I do have an emerging track record of research and publication in the areas of urbanism.
I'm not hearing you.
Sorry. So I have published on some of the highly ranked international journals, such as Habitat International back in 2016, ArcNet, International Journal of Architectural Research, 2016 and 17, and also recently on Urban Design International 2020. So why I am talking about this, so I just wanted to explain, the motivation behind why I wanted to work on the book. So definitely I've got an academic background, and I was, since I completed my bachelor's degree in 2002, I was in teaching. I was teaching at NEC prior to, leaving for Australia in 2012. And also once I finished my PhD degree in 2015, I think it has become a really critical point where, you know how to do a research, and also, the importance, and then, and you further develop that passion. But again, there is a passion in me to engage in scholarly works on urban issues of Kathmandu, as evident from my PhD, as well as, I was looking for further opportunities in terms of how I could be, engaged in those sort of works. And also the other motivation was the requirement as part of my current job. So I'm working as a lecturer at Melbourne Polytechnic, and we have to, do some sort of engage in some sort of research and scholarship, and that is actually a part of the current job. So these all factors, I think, have motivated me in getting involved in this book project. Now, how did the idea start? So in April 2019, I received an email from the publisher, Nova Science Publisher Incorporated, based in New York. So, they had actually looked at some of my publications, and, the message was, actually sent based on those findings. So, and when they first, got in touch with me, so they initially asked me to submit a book chapter. But later I expressed my interest in editing a book as well. So, and then, they later, in the same month, they actually invited me to submit a book proposal on any topic in urban growth. So I was ready to, write a book chapter. I actually did. I had written a chapter as well, but then again, it actually, it the whole process took a different turn actually. So I was actually sort of trying to write the entire book, and then I signed the contract in May 2019 with a deadline of the 31st of January 2020. But later I thought that, so maybe instead of working on urban growth, which is a broader area, so I thought maybe I should work on public spaces of Kathmandu. So I then told them that, so maybe I want to work on the public spaces, and they said yes. And then in July, I prepared the call for book chapters and posted on Facebook. And the process was that, well, it is actually a two-stage process. So first, the interested authors were requested to submit a proposal in the form of a one-page outline of their chapters, and in which they had to, write about the introduction and also the methods that were used to write, to conduct the research, and also a little bit about the finding of the research as well. So, and then once the chapters were accepted, it would actually go for the full chapter. So unfortunately, I didn't receive a very good response. So it was, it was just a small response, I would say. So, but then I had Binda Shrestha, so one of the co-editors of the book, came forward not only to write a chapter for the book, but she actually proposed, she requested to be one of the co-authors, which was actually had been really helpful for me. So I said yes, and then we started to, and since then we started to work together in the project. So we made another call in October 2019. And by March 2020, we had received 6 chapters, and obviously the deadline had to be extended. So Also, now during the editing process, the manuscript were subject to a peer review. So how did we did that was, so as an editor, we would review the papers, but also we would ask the other authors to review the papers. So it went through the peer review process as well. And as a result, so one of the chapters, I mean, among many submissions, one of the chapters got rejected. So, and by that time, so we had like 5 chapters. So and I decided to include my chapter as well, because I thought maybe I mean 5 chapters would be not enough for a book. So maybe I would include my chapter as well. So, and then by that time we had to finalize the name of the book. To reflect on the content of the book itself. So once we got all the chapters and once we went through all the content of the chapters, so and we came up with the name of the book. And also, during the editing process, one of the things that was sort of, really, not really difficult, but, I mean, time consuming was the fact that most chapters require heavy editing. So this was done mainly due to the fact that you need to adhere to the guidelines of the publishers, but also as an editor, as editors, we had this responsibility to uplift the writing standard as well, so that you actually could come up with a better written communication throughout the entire book. So the outcome was, so I mean, after working on the book for about 1.5 years, so the outcome was obviously the 6 chapters written by the budding researchers, I would say, in the discipline, and covering all forms of public spaces, both old and new. And these public spaces range from Dharbar Square, courtyards, and other civic spaces such as Turikal, to river fronts, those kind of spaces as well. And also the issues covered in the book include design, development, transformation, and management of public spaces, as well as in one of the chapters, we have covered the idea of the concept of city identity and how does it relate to the use of public spaces. And also, the authors have tried to look at the ideas of public spaces, both in terms of historical as well as contemporary context. So this is the page of of the publishers. So the book is available on this web page, uh, belonging to the Nova publisher, Nova Science Publishers. And so the outcome is we've got a book which has got 6 chapters written by six different authors. So the chapter 1 was written by myself. I had tried to focus on the historic urban spaces, primarily looking at the morphology of traditional town and also the organization of neighborhood spaces in the Kathmandu Valley. So I will talk about that in brief shortly once I finish this presentation. Then we've got the second chapter written by Binda and also co-written by myself. So like I said, in this chapter, so we have tried to look at, we looked at Patan Dharbar Square as a case study to examine the significance of historic urban squares in generating contemporary city identity. So we know that public spaces historic open spaces have changed, but how have they changed and what are the impacts on the city identity that we use, or we look as we use, or as we look at them at present. So that was about the second chapter. Third, written by Bursa, I think it was part of the her master's thesis, where she has done a good research on Bagmati riverfront. And then we've got Shyam Sunder Coven, he has also done a good research, trying to look at how what is happening in between the old and new public spaces, and so how the current development has impacted that the idea of interconnectedness between the old and new spaces in the context of Bhaktapur area. Then we've got another chapter by Shrestha on Tudikal. This was also a part of his master's thesis. So we know the importance of Tudikal as a civic space. So I think this is also one of the valuable contributions for the book. And then finally we've got Sovitzakya. He's from a non-architecture background. His discipline is, I think, management and governance, urban governance. But he has, I really appreciate, he has covered the ideas of city planning and management, trying to look at it from a historic perspective, as well as what you could actually do in the current time. So I think it is a very good coverage on the management of urban public spaces in the Kathmandu Valley. So in terms of the contribution to the field, or to the research area. So I think the book definitely helps to develop a better understanding of the contemporary issues of public realm of the Kathmandu Valley. That's there, but also what we as editors, what we aimed was we hope that in a true sense. So it should help to expand the dialogues that we as a scholar have on the impact of current growth and change on public spaces, and particularly looking at the quality and the management of public spaces. So we want actually to that dialogue to grow and expand and take a bigger form, so that everyone is involved. And obviously, it did provide a platform to publish their work for early career researchers, including myself. So, which is, I think, is again a good thing. And I was told that maybe it could be an inspiration for others. If that is the case, I think it's really a good thing again. But I think well, this is I mean, one of the very few books on the public spaces in the Kathmandu Valley. So there is a big need to conduct research on urbanism, and particularly on public spaces. But so the need is huge, but I think probably it is definitely a contribution. Maybe it's a small contribution. So that means that what I'm trying to say is that maybe we need to work more, so that so that every one of us is contributing in our own way, and then doing different research in different areas, and then developing that kind of scholarly initiatives. So talking about my publications, so maybe I thought maybe some of you might be interested in further exploring my work. So my PhD thesis is available on this link, and also I'm on ResearchGate, and also I'm on Google Scholar. So these are the links to to access some of my other works. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing the story behind the book. I'm sure our audience are very much excited to learn more about the chapters in it. Before getting into the chapter presentation, I would like to inform that if you have any queries, please write it down in the Q&A box in Zoom and in the comment section in Facebook, which will be taken at the end of the whole presentation. And please don't forget to mention to which author is the question for. Without any further ado, let's again welcome architect Dr. Rajan Chitrakar to present on the first chapter on morphology of traditional towns and the organization of neighborhood public spaces in the Kahman Valley.
Thanks, Ina, again. So the first chapter is on, so I've explained previously, so it was written on the morphology of traditional towns and also on the organization of neighborhood public spaces. And we've got 6 chapters to present, so we don't have, I think, more time, probably about 50 minutes. So I will try to be really quick. We had actually discussed, and we agreed that we won't take much time, and we will keep it really short. So I need to be really quick with this. So this chapter is, we all know that traditional towns of the Kathmandu Valley boast a very fine provision of public spaces. So basically, this is the first chapter is the review of the morphology of these towns. So, the physical form, and then, also trying to look at the organization of public spaces within the residential neighborhoods. And while doing that, so it identifies some of the key attributes of such spaces and also the factors that are responsible for their, physical formation as well as the use factors. So as you can see in this map of the Kathmandu Valley, which shows the 3 principal towns. Well, if you look at the physical form of the traditional, towns as they appear today, they were built mostly during the Malla period, between the 13th and the 18th century, and those were all built by the Newars. And these towns are really compact and dense settlements, and they have actually developed a very definitive, very good urban character. And also we can see, we can learn and we can read that some of the religious principles have been used in the planning and design of these cities, such as mandala and all sort of other metaphysical or cosmological other things like that. So this is the plan of Patan, one of the 3 major towns of the Kathmandu Valley during the Malla period. Now, what you can see if you have take a close look at the city plan, what you will see is that the towns have been divided into different residential neighborhoods or tolls, and they are not only special units, but they are social units as well. So they are social unit because you would find in each toll or in each neighborhood you would find a homogeneous population belonging to the same clan or same occupational caste, and they are linked to each other by a social network. It could be a guthi or it could be other forms of social networking device, or maybe means. So again, this is the city plan of Bhaktapur. So what you can see if you have again, take a close look at these neighborhoods, it does, each toll or each neighborhood is centered around a spacious square, and there is a very good amount of public spaces. Almost like 12% of the total housing area, which is really good. So in this image, you can see the Tomari Square in Bhaktapur. So this is a really very significant urban square, one of the great urban squares in the entire valley. And you could use it for many different purposes, and the ambience changes during the different times of the day as well as different times of the year. So it's really interesting to see how people use these urban spaces and how the entire neighborhood has been designed or developed around this kind of neighborhood urban public spaces. Again, if you take a close look at the city plan of Patan, so what you will see is actually a set of urban square with a clear hierarchy. You will see Dharbar Square, you will see the Market Square, Residential Square, and Private Residential Square. So this is actually a contribution made by Professor Sudarshan Tiwari. So basically, I'm referring to his findings. But based on that, so in my review also I found that based on my review, so you could see two basic approaches of spatial configuration. So one of them is most of the market square, they are actually formed at street intersections. So you could actually call them street square as well, but most of them are town square if you look at the classification made by Professor Tiwari. And also you would find an enclosed space of the courtyards. So courtyards are mostly residential square. So in the figure, you can see in the image, so this is actually an open space at a town square in the toll of Swatha in Patan, where you can see the use of different elements as well. Different urban elements that you could use for many different purposes. So the other thing is, other good thing about these urban square is that, these squares consist of different elements of urban interest, such as, in a single space, you could see a range of different elements, so party, temples, wells, or maybe stone water spots. And sometimes, if it is a courtyard, or if it is one of the bahals or bahils, you could see different stupas or chaityas and even davali. So this is really interesting to to see all those elements developed, as well as how you actually use them for different purposes. So this is what happens in one of the parties. People actually do get engaged in developing social networks and social exchanges as part of their daily life. And this is what you actually see if you still go to the all urban areas. And also sometimes you would use these spaces for occasional feast and festivals, puja, and things like that. So so that was basically the the review of the formation and use of neighborhood public spaces. So in conclusion, I would like to say that Newa Billils had an excellent understanding of urban design principles in creating the whole town, and also creating a set of the urban squares throughout the town. And also these squares, they've got an outstanding ability to support daily life, as well as public events such as festivals and things like that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. With that, now we have our second speaker, architect Binda Shrestha, with a Bachelor's of Architecture degree from Tribhuvan University and a Master's of Science degree in Urban Planning, jointly from Tribhuvan University, Institute of Engineering, and Aalborg University, Denmark, under Erasmus Mundus scholarship in 2011. Her main research interest lies in the broad areas of contemporary urban development and its impact on city identity. She has published research articles and on international journals. Let's welcome architect Binda Shrestha to present second chapter on the significance of historic urban squares in generating contemporary city identity, case study of Patan Dharbar Square.
Hinaji, should I share my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'll try my best to limit my presentation within 10 minutes, as I have promised with my team. So the title of the chapter is entitled The Significance of Historic Urban Squares in Generating Contemporary City Identity, a case study of Patan Dharbar Square, and the chapter is jointly authored by myself and Rajan sir. Before proceeding further, I would like to acknowledge Dr. Rohit Ranjitkar sir, Dr. Rajan sir, my senior experts and colleagues who participated in my questionnaire interviews, architect Malina Maharjan, and local people without the help of whom the writing of the chapter would not have been possible. Overall, the structure of the presentation will include discussion about the selection of the chapter itself, rationale of the topic, and what does the chapter examines, structure of the paper, analysis, discussion, and finally the conclusion part. Well, the main reason for choosing this chapter started with personal inquisitiveness and reflection on some of the reflective questions, like what does identity of the city really mean, or where we are heading in terms of urban development that resonate city identity, or as we all understand that in terms of ancient cities and in terms of medieval cities, it is the collective identity purpose is always the social cultural need or defensive need or ornamental need. So what really constitutes the collective identity purpose of the contemporary city in present context? We all understand that the complexity of urban dynamics and the city formation process is a continuous, and a city always struggles to be modern and relate to its root at the same time. So because of this, many scholars have revealed the statements like cities being the product of the time. Similarly, in the case of the write-ups written by the Lynch in his write-up, image of the contemporary city as the image of the ambiguity or the continuity or readiness for the change as the image of the contemporary city. So main inspiration of the writing this chapter was also inspired by the book called The Spirit of Cities and Why Identity of City Matters in the Global Age. So the chapter tries to examine the domain of perceiving our historic urban squares, studying its contemporary development through the descriptive approach and taking the theoretical reference and trying to attempt the questions like, how is current urban development trend resonate in the realm of city identity, or what makes the urban square of Dharbar Square significant? Overall, the structure of the chapter is structured in main 5 headings: introduction, theoretical studies, case studies, analysis, discussions, and the conclusion. The theoretical realms on deducing the understanding of public space, urban squares, and discourses on city identity has been taken from the reference of various scholars who states the understanding of public space as an integral space for human settlement or socialization as a backbone or democratic construct, renaissance of social public space coming to the contemporary network society which we are in. And similarly, coming to the urban squares, urban squares is a type of public space which has a dynamic space, activity focus at the centered urban areas, and it's contribute to this quality of the civic life. The main discourses on the city identity has been taken by with reference to various theoretical studies as identity as a process and it's a not fixed object, as quoted in his write-up by Korea and in his write-up in Quest for Identity of City, or identity as a collective values, or city identity as an abstract imagination and dynamics of sense, dynamics of place, or sense of belongings that attributes to image, sociocultural context, memories, and aspiration. So the question arises, is it identity of city, is it only aesthetically derived, or is a holistic spectrum? The main source of inspiration and understanding the city identity is from the chapter written by the Riza in her book City Identity and City Branding, where she tries to understand main 3 terminologies: city image, city branding, and the city identity. Where city image mainly constitutes a physical entity or it relates with the beautification. Similarly, city branding, when you try to commodify the city in terms of market-driven, in terms of economic gain. And while coming to the city identity is a complex and a holistic spectrum of city image, memories, stories, history, culture, and association. So coming to the case study has been taken by the inclusion of understanding the traditional urbanism in the study area of the Patan Dharbar Square, which embodies the original spirit of city that echoes centuries-old traditions, culture, and social coherence. In the other aspect, the existing urban condition and current transformation has been studied with view of interviewing and observation and strolling to understand the city's perception and public domain of the study area. The parameters like the activities focused and the different activities have been studied in terms of reference with the Gale's different approaches of activities like necessary and optional, and the religious activities have been added as per our Nepalese context. And the festivals or religious activities that brings authenticity of place and culture that associate with time, and there is adaptive contemporary use of the space area, such as to use it for as a concert or for the economically active group for the discussions and for festivals, or as we constitute for the right of the children as a space has been the contemporary use. In other parameters of studying the characters of form and streetscape has been studied. The overall streetscape has been to be the reflection of various layers of histories, which can be shown through the architectural of the streetscape, whereas there has been an increasing trend of market activities, a commodified contemporary use of market activities, especially and the retail shops for the touristic activities that synchronizes with the old street shops. And there has been a increasing trend of cafes and restaurant cultures around the premises area, especially in the western side of Dharbar Square, where it's a feeling that where this, cafes and restaurants being the social lubricant for the socialization of the new contemporary use. Another aspect is the conversion of the heritage buildings into the touristic accommodation. So the old residential heritage building have been increasingly changing into the apartments and into the bed and breakfast concept. Overall, the findings of the studies has been analyzed in terms of advantages, disadvantages, and challenges. The major advantage of the space at current use is there has been the special significance in conversion of traditional aspect plus modern use of life. So giving a lesson that the social dimension is still the key aspect of human civilization, and the diverse group of people using the space advocates for the inclusivity, which our SDG goal of international agenda suggests. And similarly, the space has the potential of being a knowledge and innovation hub that synchronizes the culture and innovation at the same time. So economic gain there is a potential of the economic gain through the commodity-based market and tourism-based market. But at the same time, there as a disadvantage, we discussed about the fear of gentrification and impact on intangible heritage, and the impact of uncontrolled public activities like photo shoot or concert that will impact on our historical heritage sites and impact of negative tourism. As we understand, the heritage site has its authentic and originality values of originality, for which it has been enlisted in our UNESCO heritage site. The challenges becomes preserve our Dharbar Square, to preserve our complexes of the Dharbar Square through from the externalized pressure and from exploitation and from the negative tourism and from the random commodified market. And there has to be need of timely and periodic update and inventory guidelines to regulate these developments. And other major concern with the safety and security measures, because when you convert one private building, residential building into the public building, there has to be issue of the safety, or in case of disaster, or in case of any evacuation. Overall, the domain of urban change has been studied as ambiguous, referring to the transitional identity of urban change or developing phenomena. The urban space resonates the emblem of conjecture that suggests the strong root and great intellectual capacity of our society of the past period to survive, and still has the potential for the adaptation to the change. Through citizens' perception, we understand that citizens still desire to associate this urban space as a heritage and not only as a public open space. We should not be considering this our heritage square or Patan Dharbar Square as only the city branding tools for the economic gains only. So heritage, we need to understand heritage site is different from any Western concept of the modern downtown concept. There is need of holistic document in order to integrate these managements. Although there has been the integrated heritage management framework that has been already submitted by the government to UNESCO, which does talks about some integrated management, but it lacks in the implementation and detailing of the integrated heritage management. So not only as a monument, as a heritage structure, it's built from around the complexes, its functional use, street networks, street life activities, and the commodity market activities has also to be integrated during this holistic document. So in conclusion, I would like to conclude by saying that Dharbar Square serves as a reference point in reflecting the historic context of time and their relationship, skills, knowledge, and way of living, and to generate the city's meaning through storytelling. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for the wonderful presentation. Now on to our third speaker, architect Bursa Chitrakar Shah, with double master's degree in international cooperation and urban development from TU Darmstadt, Germany, and Universitat Internacional de Catalunya, Barcelona, Spain. Her research interest lies in urban regeneration, role of street as public open space, and strategic urban policies in developing countries. Her recent research on the role of regulatory and financial instruments in urban land use planning in Kathmandu Valley analyzed how both the regulatory and financial tools can work in tandem to manage urban land use in Nepal. She is currently working at Urban Planning and Development Center, Department of Urban Development and Building Construction. She is also a part-time faculty member at Kathmandu University School of Arts. Let's welcome architect Bursa Chitrakar Shah to present the third chapter on transformation of historic riverfronts in Asian developing countries, processes, impacts, and models in Kathmandu.
Thank you, Himaji. Namaste to everyone. Let me first share my screen. देखिरहेछ है?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Firstly, thank you, SONA, for organizing this webinar. Well, the book chapter which I contributed is titled Transformation of Historic Riverfronts in Asian Developing Countries, Processes, Impacts, and Models in Kathmandu. And as Erajan sir already mentioned, this chapter which I contributed is actually a part of my master's thesis, which I completed back in 2014. A very short background on this. While I was doing my master's in Germany and Spain.
Full screen garana.
Okay. So while I was doing my master's in Germany and Spain, riverfront development in European cities had me spellbound. Tall buildings, expanse of green lawns, and open spaces with public domain. So this environmental aesthetics was completely different from what I had become used to seeing in the riverfronts of Bagmati River in Kathmandu. So this led me to choose riverfront development as my thesis topic. But as I started doing research, which is basically what to do for a thesis, I came across different actors, stakeholders, who claim their right in this urban space that has resulted in this transformation. And so that's how the whole thesis, the whole process of thesis development began. So this book chapter mainly addresses the issues in riverfront transformation, mainly the changes in landscape, the relationship between people and their environment, and the relationship between various actors and their specific interest and specific and contrasting interest. Now, getting back to riverfronts, firstly, it is important to understand about cultural landscapes. Now, various studies and research suggest that cultural landscapes are such landscapes that are at the interface between nature and culture, tangible and intangible heritage, and biological and cultural diversity. These landscapes are not static. Rather, they may be identified as an area of constant evolution due to human activities. And these human activities can be associated with culture, religion, or any development process. Hence, riverfronts can be termed as cultural landscapes whose transformation is inevitable. But one aspect of riverfronts in our part of the world that makes it different is their working river characteristic. Despite their degrading environmental and aesthetic quality, these urban spaces support a wide range of land uses and activities. For instance, children playing games, farming of vegetables and fruits, squatters, working space of the city's washermen, and so on. So this aspect is termed as working river characteristic, which is very unique to riverfronts, especially in South Asian countries. And this makes riverfronts visibly inclusive with the urban context. Bagmati River also shows this working river characteristic. And here, mainly three groups of stakeholders are claiming this urban space: government, private institutions, and cultural heritage activists. And today for this presentation, I'll be presenting mainly on the roles and interests of these three stakeholders. In case of Bagmati River, many studies and research and development initiatives have been undertaken by government of Nepal and other organizations starting from 1990s. One major report is Bagmati Action Plan 2009 to 14. It was implemented by government of Nepal, high-powered committee for integrated development of the Bagmati civilization, which has been operative since 1995. Apart from Bagmati Action Plan, we have many studies and research which are mainly related with the degradation of Bagmati River. Now, all these reports mainly present causes of degradation of Bagmati River, mainly these causes being sand mining along the riverfront, encroachment of riverbanks by squatter settlements, extraction of river water, waste disposal system, and squatter settlement by the riverfront. But most of these actions undertaken mainly by the government focus on the environmental aspect. The second actor includes various private bodies, NGOs, and community organizations that have been influential in generating an environmental awareness regarding the degradation of the Bagmati River. Clean Bagmati campaign is one such example. With this Clean Bagmati campaign and other river festivals which used to take place in the past, these private institutions have actually been able to generate public awareness and participation. Now, the third group of stakeholder includes heritage activists. While the government and private bodies seem to be focused mainly on the environmental aspect of the river, this third group of stakeholders are mostly concerned about the degrading socio-cultural aspect. This third group of people, these cultural heritage activists, they are working to revive Bagmati civilization. One such pioneer is late Hutaram Vaidya, who led the Save Bagmati River campaign for 2 decades until his death in December 2013. He firmly put his belief that losing Bagmati civilization would actually mean losing notions of history and belonging. So all these, the government reports and plans mainly focus more on the technical aspects of the river, which is sort of guided by the global notion that riverfronts of the urban global south inevitably poses environmental problems. So this actually results overindulgence of expert, Western, and authoritative knowledge in the form of comprehensive but non-consultative planning documents such as Bagmati Action Plan. At the same time, the approaches taken by cultural heritage activists and private bodies in the case of Bagmati River perceive Bagmati riverfront merely as a social construct. So there seems to be this lack of cohesion between technocratic approaches and socio-cultural approaches. So this shows that riverfront is now becoming a space where the expectations from public and private organizations and from citizens are concentrating. Riverfront as a disputed space is clearly seen in the case of Bagmati River. While the government reports and plans focus more on the technical aspects of the river, which is important, the private bodies are more keen to voice the needs of the squatters and the general public. At the same time, the cultural heritage activists uh, they sort of blame the government initiatives for the continuous degradation of the rich cultural sites along the riverfront. So these conflicts over riverfront rather reflect our urban planning and development practice, where multiple scales of decision making is at play. Conflicts over the uses and perceptions of local environments, such as riverfronts, rather reflect our pluralist societies, which generates multi-sided interest. So this points towards need of a collaborative approach to spatial change and environmental planning. Such approach, which I would like to term as collaborative planning. So this approach would acknowledge interest of all the stakeholders. And this brings us to a shift in planning paradigm, which not only focuses on providing adequate housing or reducing pollution, but which also focuses on how issues are discussed and how problems are defined and how strategies to address them are articulated. So with this, I'd like to end this presentation, and basically the focus is mainly, I think, on how urban planners should now take a shift from technocratic approaches to collaborative planning. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. With that, on to our fourth speaker, architect Sam Sunder Coven, with Bachelor's of Architecture degree from Kopu Engineering College and a Master's of Science in Urban Planning degree from the University of Hong Kong. He works as an assistant professor at Nepal Engineering College. He has published several papers on the topic of historic urban landscape and the use of new technologies in cultural heritage preservation. Let's welcome architect Sam Sunder Coven to present the fourth chapter on rethinking interconnecting public spaces at the transboundary region between the cultural heritage subzone and the new development area in Bhaktapur.
Well, thank you, Inaji. Thank you, Sona, for giving me this opportunity, and I'm much grateful to the editorial team for pushing me up to come up with this paper. Before starting, I would like to share the screen first. Let me do it. Okay. Is it seen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Okay. So my chapter is entitled as Rethinking Interconnecting Public Spaces at a Transboundary Region between the Cultural Heritage Subzone and the New Development Areas in Bhaktapur. Into it, actually, I'm just trying to look at the public spaces in a different way from that of the layman's perceptions of public spaces. Generally, they do perceive the public spaces as the well-placed urban elements in like urban squares into cities. But this particular chapter focuses on public spaces which are sort of like NIMBYs, not into focus actually. So anyway, the whole chapter for today's presentation, the outline is something like a background, and then I would have a bit of literature, and then the conceptualization of interconnectedness in public spaces, and then the dimensions of interconnecting public spaces, and ultimately the conclusion. So before starting the chapter, I would just like to go through a short background about the study area where I have focused this study. So this is actually based on Bhaktapur, and actually we all are much aware about the urbanization trends that is going on in many of our traditional towns in Nepal. So out of this, Bhaktapur is also is also one of them. And we can see that with this map here, this is actually at the eastern edge of Bhaktapur city, and you can see it is actually a land pooling project implemented in the 80s, where the urban and then the special characteristics seems to be like totally different from that of the traditional core at its adjacent site. So what we can see is like, many of the development trends into cities is somehow similar in categories in the way that they are proceeding ahead. Not only in Bhaktapur, but in Kathmandu, as well as in Lalitpur and other traditional towns also, the same approaches have been taken into consideration. So with this all, what we can say is like, urban spaces that are being developed as a contemporary urban spaces are somehow in a contrasting way, developed in a contrasting way to that of the traditional core. And with this also, what we can say is like, despite of these dissimilar urban characteristics, but still we can see some rooms and spaces where we can interconnect the new development areas as well as the old historical core. And for that, I have referred to some of the public spaces, namely 7 public spaces which lie into these intersecting transitional road, transversally intersecting road networks in between these 2 urban typologies. So one, it is in Kamal Pokhari, another it is the Lamga, the third it is the Garurkunda, Chamashinga, and Devaina, Brahmani, and Maheswari. These are actually supposed to be a part of the traditional core, but still, but later when the urban development trends, they went on wearing on. They are in a way of changing rigorously. However, the elements that they constitute are still into a historical manner. So I believe that this is a way. This is one of the thing that has lured me to think about and then discuss as a public space. So on the right side, you can see the characteristics of this of the special characteristics of the places. The first one at the topmost part is the traditional Taulache toll, traditional historical core known as Taulache, and then the low one is the Kamal Binak, Tumoso, and then Libali. These are the three land pooling projects that have been serially implemented into Bhaktapur municipality zone at the eastern edge in the 80s. So we can see a drastic change into change of the special characteristics among these two areas. So a little bit of literature. Okay, sorry. Actually, public spaces are where people get inspirations about the cities. So that's why we can say it is as public spaces as a social product, and we cannot see them into isolation. And also, public spaces generally are meant for public. So unlike publicness, even private sectors also seem to be contributing into its formation, and that is according to Richard Sennett in his The Fall of Public Man. He has mentioned that there is not a definite boundary between the public and then the private sectors into public spaces. Similarly, even the shaping of public realm into these public spaces is actually an interplay between the public and the private sectors. So we can say that the concept of public into public spaces is not just a coherent unified group, but a composite of fragmented society of different economy and age groups. And similarly, public spaces also seem to change when they stop functioning as a venue for interaction. So what we can say is that we can why I came up with this interconnection aspect to look into the public spaces is because normally people, they just think public spaces as a public squares. Like, they are not aware about many of the sparsely occurring public spaces into different parts of any city. So generally, so those spaces which are not been into consideration for the major city development schemes, they are in a phase of declining in terms of the spatial quality, and then even their components as well, and then their however, the declination of the public realm into these public spaces is actually a major critique that has been seen through a way of how they are being transformation and how changes have been occurring into these places. So basically, I have tried to look this perspective into two theoretical perspectives. One is with the management dimensions of public spaces, where we will be thinking about the causes and the effects of transformation. So generally, it has been seen as a deterioration due to under management and then the over management. But both of these things are actually leading towards the declination of any public spaces. And another perspective that I've turned through is we might be thinking about public spaces as in a very in a positive way, like it's always sought to be for the public use utilities and all, but actually the real picture of the public spaces might be different. Like rhetoric, as well as the rhetoric side, and then the reality perspective of the use of urban spaces, public spaces might be different than that of the what we expect. So public spaces generally mean for the common right for the public use, while in reality the urban space dynamics is inevitable, and you can see a lot of multiple stakes being used, a part of major utilities of public spaces. So in this way, we say that reality, in this perspective, we can say that we have public-private dynamics occurring into public spaces. Similarly, we can see the existence of many economic interests that is prevailing into these public spaces. The technologies and then the infrastructure interventions into these public spaces also are prone, and definitely the multifaceted stakeholders. Those are the major key players into the functioning of public spaces. After that, I would like to go through how through the dimensions that I've figured out while going through the study areas. So the first one is the connecting tissues and spatial continuity. Into it, despite of the incoherent urban characteristics that we can see into these two different typologies of urban spaces, and then the in between public spaces, they are supposed to be the activity centers with traditional ambiances. We can still see a lot many historical urban elements present into those spaces while they are in a state of transition. While the actual state of these public spaces are volatile due to many of the placemaking activities focus onto these places through different stakeholders, private as well as public too. Similarly, the significant role that these public spaces playing a significant role in bringing together the residents of either the core areas and the new development areas. So this role, we can see that the public spaces which we have sought as the interconnecting public spaces are do play a significant role as a connecting tissue. While the second one would be the urban-rural linkage. We can say that the historical settlements or any our historical settlements, the traditional towns, they had a very good amount of agricultural hinterland in its periphery, while the present trend of urbanizations and then the urban growth led the disappearances of all those agricultural land on its periphery. So the whole, what we can assume, we can say is even the public spaces that we are talking about right now, they were supposed to be, they were having the agro-based utilities and expressions of the space uses. While that has been changed into different utility now. So what we can see now is the informal vegetable markets from the nearby villages. So the people from the nearby villages, and then even into the adjoining from the municipality, adjoining municipalities also do visit there and then make a stop into these public spaces, and then the scale, because of this whole scale of mobility has changed and resulted into migration, a sort of trade, exchange, and employment also do occur. So these are some of the things that are happening into the public spaces as a way that they characterize as interconnecting spaces. While we can also see the infrastructure and technology investment being more focused onto these places, since we can see into the study areas as the accumulation of the administrative, educational, commercial, and financial institutions. So that has impacted into the functioning, the whole functioning of the public spaces. So with this accumulation, we can see a lot many emergence of thought spaces and then the invented spaces, which are actually the cause for the fragmentations of the public spaces into this area. While we have multifaceted involvement as well, mainly the study areas that I have taken into consideration for this chapter is actually a cultural route and dominated by mostly pedestrians during festivals. Many of the places get occupied by now because of these changes, and then the transformation as well as transitional state signifies that it is now being occupied by low-wage workers, vendors, and then the street kids as well. Besides that, we have annoying and irritating sense of places into these public spaces due to excessive amount of traffic and then the pollutions. So because of these things, the whole scenario is like people they have considered these public spaces as just pass by place, and then definitely these places used to be a long-term, defined kind of public spaces to enjoy and then to stroll over for the people. They are being a very short stay spaces. So it means like these things also are acting upon to make the whole to cause the declination of that public spaces as well. Similarly, the changing historic environments. I have already mentioned that these places are enriched with much historic buildings and heritages, but the scenario is like these historic buildings and then the heritages, they are either in the dilapidated situation because of less focus being given to these areas, or even some of the urban planning projects or development, urban development consequences, they have led to relocation of heritage buildings in the name of placemaking and all. And then even some of these important heritage or historic elements, urban elements, are forbidden due to caging and fencing too. So ultimately, the privatization and then the engrossment that is more primitive into these areas. Many of the residential buildings, they are converted into commercial use, and then that had led to much of the overflowing shops, which somehow restricts the general public, or even they obstruct the general public for their movement, and abundant hot spaces, and then the parking onto the that has led to parking onto the streets as well. Similarly, the dumping corners at an eyesight of public spaces, they are actually the eyesores for people to be into the public spaces. And so with this, what we can say is like, the individuals themselves are whom we consider as the general public might be acting or is responsible for these causes into the public spaces. So conclusively, what I can say is like the output and then the public spaces, urban growth is gaining the momentum, and then that has affected the way the public spaces function into these areas. Strategically, these public spaces, the interconnecting public spaces, they are best related to the transitional expressions of contemporary public spaces because they are juxtaposed, placed in between these two different urban typologies. So their relationship is there through different ways, socially and then culturally as well as economically too. So interconnection actually is in itself is not a typology. I have not tried to state it as a typology of urban spaces, but that is a specific urban characteristics of a historic city. One of the state of its as one of the state of transformation, because probably the one which we call as urban contemporary urban areas or cities, contemporary cities, they might have this as the very preliminary phase regarding its transformation. Similarly, interconnecting public spaces still portray the historical significance and a strong action of place and identity to the people. Because with this thing, we can even refer these places for many of the people to be considered as a reference point as well. Similarly, the interconnected public spaces are a progression in the development of contemporary public spaces, so that have a capability to reconcile as a public venue for the new neighbors and their residents. So this has had this, despite of all of this thing, and then the characteristics, and then the features, we can say that interconnecting spaces, they are of a actually they can be considered as a public spaces, but not a specific typologies of public spaces. So with this, I would like to thank you. And okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. With that, we have our fifth speaker, architect Shrestha, with Masters of Urban Design and Conservation from Coven Engineering College, in which he wrote a thesis on redevelopment of Tudor Hill. He is currently a part-time faculty member at Coven Engineering College in the Department of Architecture. His primary research interests are in public space and neo-vernacular architecture. He is also the executive member of the 13th Executive Committee of Society of Nepalese Architects 2018-2020. Let's welcome architect Shrestha to present the fifth chapter on Finding Lost Space, a case of Tudor Hill.
Shall I start, Hina?
Yes, sir.
First of all, thank you, Sona. I'm very grateful for providing me such a good opportunity, which I had never thought that I would do one day. So I'll share my screen now. My chapter is Lost Space and it's part of my master's thesis program. So I'll move quickly. Say that Kathmandu has very long history of developing different forms of urban public spaces, and Tudor Hill is one of such open space that has witnessed historical development and transformation in different political periods of Nepal, and even today it is a public space. Tudor Hill is now a major public space, and it was in the outskirts of old city. Now, my chapter try to investigate the importance of Tudikal and how it has emerged as a multifunction public venue in today's period with different public activities which are taking place in and around Tudikal. The, the state of rapid transformation and deterioration which frequent undesirable interventions, and my finding um, reveals that Tudikal needs to be conserved and refurbished as a civic space of national importance. I'll move quickly to chapter major portion, which that which will understand Tudikal as a public space. Moreover, on political how Tudikal has been used um, for me. Political has been used as a for political use, and it's a focal space with different with symbols, memories, and different narrations, and it has social, cultural rituals, and religious values. Obviously, Tulikal big open space in the center of the valley. It's a shelter for disaster, and now Tulikal has been a major transit hub. Now it's political. Tulikal as a public space. Let's see. Until the end of Malla period, Tudikal was merely a cultural space and a military paragon. But after Rana regime, this significance of Tudikal came into rise with start to rise. Gorijatra Gorika used to be one symbolic and a part of the culture of Nevar, but Jangabadana transformed this very beautiful festival to show his military power at that time. And at that time, besides that, besides that, different Rana rulers uh, proclaimed areas of erecting this horse riding statues to show the strength. During the Rana period, political significance drastically came into Tudikal. That Bir Shamsher converted Tudikal fully into military ground. And at that time, Tudikal, there was a Khoriku vote, there's Khoriku tree of Khori tree in the center of the Tudikal, from where significant announcements, speeches, and different events. These are pictures we show that the Tudikals as a very political use. And later on, King Mahendra constructed Khulamans, which are conceived as an open air stage for holding different political rallies and public talks and different events there also. Which really during the Jan Andolan of 6263 also, and political rallies. And now Tudikal, if we observe carefully, Tudikal it is strategically located at the crossroad of three power centers in Kathmandu. That in the you see Kathmandu, Dharbar Square, Dharbar, Narayan Dharbar, Shivan Dharbar. These as you know, Dharbar represents it's a Malla period. Although rulers lived there for some generation, then the power shifted later on when Rana came into power, and also during the Panchayat era also. Later, the power shifted to Shindrabar after it was built. So now till now, the Shindrabar also remained the administrator of Nepal till now. So buildings and urban spaces function as urban foci of different political periods. And not only that, these urban centers different kinds of architecture which is important in the field of architecture history of Nepal, because these three Hanuman Dokha represents the Malla era, and that Malla era and the styles, the actor styles were great. Representing the Rana period, and Narayan Dharbar represents the modern era. So, and together with this also, now a new link been connected from Bhadrakali to Mightygarh Mandala. And now Mightygarh Mandala is important as this linkage is with Mightygarh Mandala is very important as this urban space has been developed into a very good public venue. It is near with our recent our and this has created the Bhadrakali space as a new normal space. Besides this, memories underlying in the Tudikal area. One of them is from which we can recall memories and symbols also. One of them is Side Gate, which is dedicated to the folk, and another one is Pokhari. King Pratap Malla built this to console his wife, and recently we have memories down during the recent 2015 earthquake, and at present the ruined structure always reminds us of the unfortunate event and will recall for generations. So this Turikal with memories and symbols also. Besides that, that different social activities are going on are common in Tunikal, different parts of Tunikal. If you go at the morning, you will see people exercising, yoga. If you go at and there are different sports events are here. If you go in the holidays, different youngsters play different types of games there. And if you move on to Ratna Park and also in Turikal, you gatherings, meetings, discussions. And besides that, Turikal has been a very important space for different cultural groups also, different ethnic groups also, because different they have moved different parts of the country and prefer not to go during the festival. Then they gathered in Turikal and celebrate with the communities, their the cultures. We have been witnessing Losar programs, Magi programs, Gauri principal here, and besides that, we'll see different events that and order, and we have different religious temples and shrines around the Turikal, like Mahakal Temple, Bhadrakali Temple, and Rani Pokhari along its perimeter. Two major festivals are celebrated here, Varijatra and Dasani. If you go to the morning or in the different managed ceremonies performing here, if you go into morning, newly bought vehicles are offered to newly vehicles, and there are different dignitaries of the Newar communities in Turikal. If you, the major event is Bhaitika. During the Bhaitika, the Banipuri become crowded, and during Saturdays, if you go to you'll see hundreds of people visit the temple during Saturdays, and this temple is worshipped both by Hindus, Buddhists also, and being a major open space and a big open space, Tudikal has always served as a shelter during disasters, and it was during and lately we witnessed 2015 earthquake where people took shelter and stays for months in the area. And now with the major road and with the major road east-west road linking from Tripura linking to northern part of the valley, and east crossing through Tudikal. Tudikal has now become a major hub, transportation hub for different people. City buses move from different major parts, pass through here. And now Tudikal let's discuss. Tudikal was now is neither now just a military ground space, but it has evolved as an urban open space of national importance. So Tudikal has Tudikal is historical significant for being connected to the urban rituals of city dwellers and also being a place for exhibiting the power and strength of the rural class. If you go to the history, different exhibit the power and strength in the area. We have so much stories in Tudikal. Now, as popular to the larger public as a venue to perform a range of social and cultural activities. So, but due to this current transformation and current intervention in Tudikal by the government agencies, this historical and cultural values attached to fading away. So needs to be conserved and refurbished, and its identity as civic space of national importance should be kept. Thank you. This much is my presentation.
Thank you so much, sir. Now on to our final speaker for the evening, Mr. Sovitzakya, who is a PhD candidate and junior research fellow at Ragnar Noxe Department of Innovation and Governance, Tallinn University of Technology, Estonia. He completed Masters of Science in Engineering in E-Governance Technologies and Services from Tallinn University of Technology in 2017. His primary research interest is in non-Western public administration with a focus on Buddhist governance in the Himalaya region and South Asia. Let's welcome Mr. Sovitzakya to present the 6th chapter on governing through Guti towards a neo-traditional model for governing urban public spaces in Kathmandu Valley. Sir, you are on mute.
Thanks to the moderator, thank you Hinaji, and thanks to the editors for allowing me to have this venue to publish this chapter, and also today to speak about my chapter. And let me just go on full slideshow view, if this works. Okay. So let me give a short introduction of myself before I go on to talk about the chapter itself. I am a 4th-year PhD student in Ragnar Noxe Department of Innovation and Governance in Tallinn University of Technology in Estonia. And I started out as an e-governance student, and then I move on to more of non-Western public administration. And my focus, as Hinaji has already introduced me, is towards non-Western public administration with focus on Buddhist governance institutions. And that being said, I am looking into Gutis And yes, there will be someone probably who would think, okay, Gutis are not only Buddhists, also Hindus are them. But what I am doing is I'm looking at Gutis from the perspective of being also very much integral in Buddhism itself, and of course I totally agree that it is also prevalent amongst non-Buddhists as well. And what I want to look through my research is how in the contemporary times Gutis are still relevant or can still be relevant. Can they be rejuvenated in any other ways? Does making them relevant again or bringing them back into the mainstream of governance, does that make any sense? So I am looking at all this, and in the backdrop of the availability of ICT technologies. So how does ICT technology and innovation affect the Guti, and how does the partnership or the amalgamation between these two affect in overall in terms of how effective urban governance can be achieved. For this presentation, I will be maybe including one or two things that might not be in the book chapter itself, but the book chapter, this is mainly about the urban spaces of Nepal Mandala. If you can see the screen on the right, I have this picture of Kathmandu Valley, and the name given to the map is Nepal, right? So this means a lot. This means that Nepal Mandala was a political space. It was a political space, and Nepal Mandala beyond Kathmandu Valley was where this urban space had its effects, or where the branches of this urban space reach towards. So looking at it, you can relate to this from the center and periphery theory, and see that it's not only the city that is important, but also the periphery of the city that becomes important. And for governing a political entity, a space, a state, there are institutions that are very important, right? It is mainly institutions that are that forms the state, not just the physical space itself, right? And since we are most of us architects, let me give an example that if there is a house, yes, you can build the most beautiful house, but then to maintain it and to keep it functioning, you have the people in place. And even with the smallest house, there is an institution in place as well. But there is a family in the house. So a family is an institution as well. So you have to look at urban spaces and cities from that angle as well, that there are always institutions that are functioning to keep the urban spaces functioning. And it is very important to the overall realization of what an urban space is. And in this chapter, what I try to do is I try to envision the potential framework of a governance through using neo-traditional model involving Guti, or the blueprint of the Guti in contemporary times. Will that be possible? Is it a prospect going forward? So that is what I try to answer. So next slide. So first of all, I look at the history, and a lot of research has been done regarding Newar culture and history of Kathmandu Valley. And of course, Neil Gutshaw, Sudarshan Tiwari, and Vergati, David Geller, all of them have mentioned how the traditional cities function, right? And these were planned cities. As you can see, there is a picture from Neil Gustaw's book, and Kathmandu itself was designed as a sword-shaped city. So Neil Gutsow himself says that maybe this is not really a physical planning. It might be that it was a kind of a metaphysical imagination of the space, and it doesn't really translate to physical boundaries of the city. But however, there have been other authors and activists who really push forward this idea that it was physically designed as well in such a shape. And of course, if you look at the Azima temples surrounding the city, and if you see the historical gates that were there, probably there were some physical relevance to how the space was imagined. It was actually planned in such a way. And like Rajanji mentioned earlier as well, that Sir Sudarshan Tiwari has mentioned how cities were planned in terms of hierarchy. Of course, it was a hierarchical society, and that is how it was set up, and that is how the city quarters, which had these large spaces, public spaces called chok or chuka, and these were very important. And not just that, there were the water sources, which itself are very important public spaces. So a hitiga, or a sunken courtyard, right? That is where much of the lives of the people living in the old cities revolve around. Life is very much, water is very much important for life. And you can see even recently that people and their lives revolve around these hiti quite a lot. As children growing up in Kathmandu, you know how important different chukas are, or courtyards are. And basically, any child growing up in the old cities of Kathmandu Valley will grow up playing in these chukas. And cures are already up. We already had Rikesh presenting about Tunikhel and how important it is, and how it has evolved, the importance, and how there have been many stories concerning Tunikhel. So there are a lot of these traditional forms of public spaces that have been there and were planned as they were being built, the cities were being built. And to run these public spaces, there were institutions in place, and among them, in those institutions, Gucci was a very important part of the overall apparatus to govern these open public spaces. But as you might know, living in Kathmandu, things have changed quite drastically, and there have been a rapid urban sprawl that is growing, and open spaces are rapidly decreasing. If you see the news as well, there is plan for building new smart cities. I don't know why a new city has to be built. Cannot the old city be also made smart? That is a valid question, I think. But yeah, 60 times between the years from 1952 and 2011. So that is a very rapid growth of population, and then urban spaces has grown 404%. So, but the thing is, most of these growing urban spaces in the current Kathmandu is not planned, right? And as you can see, if you go to new communities that have formed in Kathmandu Valley, you cannot see any public spaces that are rather available in the old cities. The contrast is really there for anyone to notice that if you go to the old cities, rather there are open public spaces, but in the new areas, there aren't many public spaces. So, you know, you have houses, those are walled, and there is a narrow lane that goes from between the houses. That is how typical new settlements are, because they are not planned. You know, it is just the urban sprawl that is going. And then it's not just the diminishing public spaces, but it is also encroaching of the old public spaces that has been a continual problem in recent years. And of course, the lack of planning for any of the very basic requirements for an urban settlement is not there. Sewage management, waste management. So all of these things are somehow not being fulfilled. But since 2015, after the earthquake, as the earthquake destroyed a lot of the heritage sites, and you can see that somehow created this catalyst of a movement which seemingly overturned the trajectory of how things were going, right? And before that, you could see that Hittis were being slowly discarded. People are not really taking care of the Hittis. There were vegetation growing on the Hittis. Water had stopped flowing. But all of a sudden, after 2015, the heritage movement started through initiative of youth leadership. And it is as if the city all of a sudden awakened, right? It was a cataclysmic event of the earthquake, which kind of shook the very belief of the people that maybe this is a time for change. And that is what has been happening recently. There is a movement going on which demands public participation, right? And this is not just in Nepal as well. Across the world, public participation, participatory governance, this is very much important. Private-public partnership, collaboration, these are the key words when you talk about any topic in governance: collaboration, public participation. So we have this already from before as well, because Gutis in itself is a form of participatory governance apparatus itself, because people are directly participating in governing of public spaces, right? Be it Hittis, be it different jokes. There are Twagutis who will look after the necessities of the different quarters. So there was this institution that was already in place, and people are taking the same blueprint, right? Knowingly or unknowingly. Some people I have interviewed throughout my research, and some people do not really attribute what is going on to the old institution, but somehow they are using what they knew, what they were used to, right? And this has been going on for quite some time. And there are cooperatives, there are user committees, and these kind of institutions, these kind of organizations kind of parallel but also complement the institutions of the old. So there is this seemingly rejuvenation of the Gutis through Guti-like or newer formats of Gutis or neo-Gutis. What I have also mentioned, I've not mentioned neo-Gutis in this particular paper, but I have mentioned in the paper that I published then after. And the question now being asked is, how do we go forward? Yes, of course, we need development, but what is the phase of development? How do we modernize, right? Should modernizations always follow the global standards, or should we use our local vernacular structures in governance as well? So that is the question that is very important to be asked. Thanks. Hinazi, you're muted.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We will take few questions from the audience now. We have one question from Sahara Shrestha, and it is directed to either Binda Shrestha or architect Sunder Coven. So she says, thank you for the great presentation. I was wondering if you could expand the disadvantage of commodification of historic urban square, and if you found any measures that are adapted to conserve the significance of traditional public space. So either Shyam sir or...
let me take this.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Regarding Sarah's question, thank you for it. Actually, the major disadvantage that we can find regarding the commodification of the squares, historical squares, might be like, if you think it more physically, then its maintenance and its importance, right? The direct benefit of its physical presence into the squares would be for the people who are just onto its periphery. But the ultimate benefit has to be for the entire people of the town, because the value of those physical entities that happens to be into these public squares, their values are also embedded with the intangible aspects. So since the intangible aspect also plays a quite crucial role into this aspect, I think the whole town, the people who are maintaining these intangible attributes of the city, are also responsible to share the benefits from these outcomes of the historical squares. And that is somehow leading to a sort of like gentrification into the whole entire town. Only a few group of people who are just near to these squares may be benefiting, having the economic benefit for these occurrences. Like, and another thing is like, regarding the preservation measures, I think we have those things could be done. Those things were done in a very ancient times through the societal norms, just like Sovitji mentioned about the gutis. Gutis are also responsible for keeping the whole things intact. And besides that, the municipalities, the local authorities, they are making up their efforts into keeping all these spaces intact, like through different bylaws, like height restrictions to the buildings, and then even the facades, and then going through all those buildings, facades maintenance and all those things. They are also the measures to preserve the ambience of these places. I hope I have answered Sahara.
I would also like Binda ma'am to answer to this question.
Okay, thank you for the question. Regarding the, as we understood from the urban transformation that is happening, the greatest challenge is the commodification of this urban chains in the around the Dharbar Square area. So first would be the institutional aspect, or the policy or the governance aspect that has the key role in governing these the functional dynamics of these urban changes in these areas. It's not that we don't have the policies or we don't have the guidelines. I have referred for certain institutional guidelines that is correlated with the urban dynamics change in the Patan Dharbar Square. For example, why that heritage Patan Dharbar Square is considered in heritage. Why the aspects are why UNESCO has enlisted the Dharbar Square area as a heritage. It has three major aspects. That is the outstanding cultural values, and its authenticity and its integrity. For this aspect, UNESCO has enlisted the Dharbar Square area and as a heritage area. And similarly, we do have the Monument Preservation Act. We do have the Integrated Management Act that talks about the regulating different changes or limiting these changes in these areas. In terms of the local governments, we do have the bylaws that says that there should be restriction on any functional use of the building that relate environmental and the social hazard of this area. But the problem is that there is a difference between the on-ground reality change and the policy. There has been the gap. So first, we need to strongly implement what is there in the policy itself. Second, we need to have the ethical understanding of our heritage site by the people itself, because a heritage site is not just area is not just a random touristic area. Like, it's not like a Tamil area where any like backpacker tourists would come and do any activity. We need to preserve that authenticity. We need to limit what kind of activities that has to be there. Are we going to like regulate any kind of like cafes or any kind of activities? For example, we can see that there is a growing trend of growing trends of kind of like music concerts being happening in the during the weekends in this Dharbar Square area. So what impact those sound of that high musical concert would give in our historical buildings? Are we going to promote these activities? So there has to be certain restriction through fines or strict regulations. And similarly, in other aspects, like, yes, as I have discussed, the positive aspect of changing the residential building into the touristic accommodation, it has a positive impact in terms of continuing the residential heritage building. But at the same time, like, we are converting the functional dynamics, the place which we are used by the private residential compounds of the family of 5, 6, or 10 maximum, but it is being converted to the apartments, or it is being converted to the hotels. So what is there being a hotel or being a residential building is the same? Like, it's not. But when we talk about what about the aspects of like consideration criteria for being the residential building to convert into the hotels or apartments, this all has to be guided and strictly implemented, so that like on ground there is a, as I already said, there has been a strict like gap in the on-ground reality on the ground and the policies which are there. So we need to like in some way the policies, implementing the policies are quite backward than the on-ground changes. For this, we just came to the news that the KMC, in terms of Basantapur Dharbar Square, is trying to implement or trying to remove this ad hoc commodified market. So maybe we can help through strong policies and implementing it. Thank you. Hope I answered the question.
Thank you, ma'am. We again have a question from Shrestha, and this is for Sovitzakya. She says, you included public participation is one of the aspects of governing public space, which I agree is very important. I was wondering if the migration and change in demography in traditional communities has been ignorant about public participation since they don't feel belong there.
Let me read the last part. I was wondering if the migration change in the demography in the traditional communities has been ignorant about public participation since don't feel belong here. I assume she's talking about the new communities that are formed, not the historical traditional communities in terms of ethnicity. But yes, Michael Hutt has written a great article about how people who have moved into Kathmandu later associate more with Dharahara compared to, say, the historical Dharbar Square. And this does happen because how Hutt put it, people come in to Kathmandu and they first go to Sundara because there is the bus stop and all that. So they see this imposing tower of Dharara, and then somehow, because this is the early sites they see, they are more associated with Dharara than other monuments which are much older and probably from aspect of archaeology and architecture, those are probably even more important than Dharara. But this is the problem of not being integrated into the community. And this happens everywhere where there is new migrating population, that there is requirement of time for the newly immigrating population to get integrated into the community. And once they are integrated into the community and they feel like belonging to the community, and then of course they will have this belongingness that they will feel, and the requirement to preserve traditional heritages that will be felt as well. So it is a question of how much time people have had and how rapidly the population is increasing. And I think the problem with Kathmandu is that the population has increased much more in rapid speed than the authorities could really plan for it, or the newly immigrating community could integrate into into the systems that there already was. But I do see a lot of new changes that is being that is happening. Maybe Rikesh can expand on this as well, but the Tunichel movement has been very inclusive of not just the traditional population, the Nevas, but also non-Nevas as well, and people who have maybe only been here for the first generation as well. So there are these events that suggest that if given the opportunity, if there is enough communication, people can adapt and feel the belongingness or sense the importance of the pre-existing heritages of the place they immigrate to, right? Hopefully that answers your question, Saharaji.
Thank you so much, sir. I guess we don't have any more questions. So thank you so much to everyone.
I have one.
Okay, sir.
I have one.
Yes. Yes, sir.
I'm Bharat Sharma. More than question, I think the whole presentation, the 6th chapter, for me, talking philosophically, came out as a rainbow, where you have warm colors and cool colors, but rainbow reads as one entity. It's very much homogeneity. So having said that, because 6 chapters by 6 authors, unique way, I think so how to solve it, perhaps because of the time constraint, is very, he talked about, they didn't have much time, I guess, and then the Buddhist philosophy behind it, how it was really infusing the society to hold to the ground, which is now gradually giving way. But my question to Professor Dr. Rajan Chitrakar is that you very rightly talked that the spatial, these spaces are not from a spatial point of view, social point of view also, and then you talk about the homogeneity. But Rajan, I think the unique aspect in the Malakalin time was that unity, and there was homogeneity in heterogeneity. There was zoning by Zat system, the space, whole spatial system of the town or the settlement. You have Zat-based, I'm not endorsing that Zat-based thing was good or bad, but it was there. But having said that, the nodal points and these open, these squares and spaces were the places where that
I think we lost you or what?
Yeah, Balsar, you are on mute.
Sorry, it was kaput, but there was homogeneity in heterogeneity. So that was the Dr. Rajan?
Yes, I'm listening to you,
Did
sir.
you get my?
Yeah, I get your point, sir.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Please.
so yeah, I do agree with
Yeah.
you. So I mean, when you said heterogeneity in homogeneity, I do agree with that. So I mean, within the Newar community, we can find many subcaste groups, and so I think that is what you were referring to. And then even within a traditional town, inhabited by the Newar, so you can see different caste groups located in different sectors, and then and then living their lives within the community. So I think that is a very good, very valid observation from your side. Well, that is something we could think of when we think of the public spaces. But again,
And do you agree that the spaces were not single functional spaces?
Yeah.
The Nevada towns, you talk about all the 3 towns, is from a small little points to Dharbar Square or any other square, Martin Square. They had many functions.
Yeah,
It was,
I think
when you look at the time cycle, the functions were so to Western open spaces and public realms. We had a unique kind of heritage which is now being destroyed. I don't know to what extent do you agree.
Bharat sir, I think I have mentioned this in one when I when I talked about Tomodi Square as one of my slides. So I mean, the open space could take different forms at different times of the day, and also during different times of the year. So I think I have mentioned this, and I do agree with you, sir. And thank you for your observation as well.
So I guess that's the end of the Q&A session. And with that, thank you so much to everyone who are with us today, and also to the authors, and a big congratulations for the book. With this, we are now towards the end of the program, and I would like to welcome President of Society of Nepalese Architects, Architect Anju Malla Pradhan ma'am, to deliver the closing remarks and end the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Ina. Namaste, everyone. I'm very sorry I got disconnected in between for a few minutes. As ekdamai yo net up and down bhairahecha. This whole session, it's been like such a revival of what we've been talking about throughout our tenure, starting from the 12th EC. We've been advocating SONA with the activists about open spaces, public spaces, big and small, about the heritage, post-earthquake, the reconstruction that was happening. We've been advocating that. We've been advocating about Turi Hill, and that has been started. We have Bharat Sharma sir also with us. He's been talking about Turi Hill being the lungs of the entire valley. So, it was like reminiscing the entire thing, like a episode nai reminisce bhaera say we were talking about this book jasto lagyo aaj. It's been really very, engaging, all the topics. Like Erajan sir was talking about the different squares, the open squares, the residential squares, the market squares, the Dharbar squares, how it's interlinked, the importance of it and all. And architect Binda Shrestha was also talking similar lines. We were listening to the 6 authors talking about it from their perspective. And especially like it was like Bharat sir also said, I got to hear a little bit of what he said. The 6th speaker that we had, someone beyond the architectural fraternity, which was very interesting. The perspective of what he said about the entire thing, Guti. He was talking about Guti, and when the Guti thing happened here in Maitigar, SONA and quite a few of its members were a big part of it also. So all of that, and it's almost like I feel it as a coincidence. We were advocating for all these things, and today our last webinar series of the 13th EC, we are concluding our webinar series with this 32nd episode. We are so happy that we are concluding it on a topic that we've been advocating for throughout. And we are also very proud to have one of our executive members, Rikesh Shrestha, also to be a part of the Thank you very much. You've given us a taste of the book, and we are really looking forward to reading the entire thing. We have a very good group of architects here also who are earning to own that book. So I hope Rajan sir will make it possible, maybe through collaboration with the architects bookshop run by Padma and Sabina, to make it available for all the members out here who are interested to read it. I definitely am. So you have a very good audience here who's looking forward to that, and I'm sure you'll make it possible for us, Binda ma'am also. So with this, I would like to thank Bharat Sharma sir for being with us, always supporting our endeavors. all the members who are with us today. And because we have it live going on in Facebook as well, we have a bit of the numbers seen on Zoom is a little bit less. And people will be watching it in the upcoming days also. Hopefully they'll be putting in questions, and we'll be getting a lot of inquiries about the availability of the book as well. So I hope we'll have a instant reaction to getting it available here, sir. With that, I would like to thank everybody who have been with us today throughout our tenure, listening to all the webinars that we've been conducting. I would like to thank Binda for moderating this session, and everybody to keep supporting. And I hope SONA gets better with the new executive committee. Better programs will happen. And we look forward to uplifting our fraternity, the organization, and everybody who are connected to us. I'm so proud to have somebody beyond the fraternity again for the first time, talking about issues that we've been talking about amongst ourselves. Now it's gone beyond those lines also. So I hope public awareness also will be enhanced with this, and we hope to keep this going. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anjuman, once again, and thank you to SONA, for this wonderful opportunity.
Thank you, President. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Erajan.
Thank you, Bharat sir.
Sovit, thank you so much.